that 2016 is likely to be the year when the consumer adoption of virtual reality is going to take off. So certainly that is what we are looking at, and I will just share my webcam for a quick view there. So we're kind of looking at that, and we've got a very good panel, and worked pretty hard in getting this panel, because we're kind of looking for panelists who have considerable expertise and experience in this area. So I'm very fortunate to have Kane, and I'll introduce Kane shortly, but also Sid, who should be joining us. Pretty shortly. He's having a few technical issues coming through. Okay, so hopefully we also have a little case study which you've had a chance to look at, but also looking for your solution to the case study. Now, before we start, just a quick introduction. So Kane is the founding CEO of Start VR, based in Sydney. Kane also presented at the SID earlier this year, and his session was extremely well attended, and it was very hands-on because Kane got the headsets to give people first-hand experience of what virtual reality is. But at the same time, we did go into the details of design development and some of the challenges and barriers towards the adoption of virtual reality, especially for employee learning and training, which is the focus for our webinar. We also have Sid Banerjee, who should be joining us soon. Sid is the founder and CEO of Indusgeeks, and Sid is based in travels across US and India, and I've kind of worked with Sid on and off, especially because we've got a common interest in healthcare. So Sid has considerable experience in terms of virtual worlds, augmented reality, and virtual reality, especially in the field of healthcare. So we're looking forward to hearing Sid speak. Finally, I'll be kind of expressing my opinions on VR. And from the list that you see, there's quite a long list of organizations that have registered for the webinar today, and we look forward to hearing from you whether you are currently implementing or looking at VR. Now, before we go to the next slide, here's a case study that I would like all of us to discuss and respond to, certainly as a panelist, in terms of what Shelley should do next. But essentially what's happened is this fictitious insurance company called Granva Insurance, the CEO went to the TEDx show where there was a session on virtual reality and came back really excited and talked to Shelley, who's a capability manager at the insurance company, that about using VR, especially in terms of getting customers to experience risky situations, the car being stolen or the house being burned, etc., so that they will then hopefully take up more insurance. Shelley, like any good manager, isn't quite sure whether and needs to do a little bit of homework and thinking because VR is pretty new. At the same time, is very conscious that the company at the moment is on an innovation journey. So they're looking for things that are innovative and also, people who are innovative. So it'll look good if Shelley's able to do that. So those are the kind of questions that Shelley has in terms of do you start the project or do you do a pilot or do we build the capability, get the vendors, and more importantly, is the audience, which is the customers, ready for the use of VR? So we'll be discussing that case study, as we go along. So a little bit about Learning Cafe, and I'm going to rush through these slides because there are a few things happening. For those who don't know about Learning Cafe, essentially it's a community of learning professionals with a very, very strong focus on implementing and on the practical aspects of converting thought leadership into something that's actionable. The way that we interact with the community is through webinars like this one, Unconference in Sydney and Melbourne. We've got social media, Twitter feeds, etc. And we also have coffee catch-ups. Brisbane is the one. Brisbane and Adelaide have just kicked off, and there's a lot of discussions going on there. And we do conduct capability building workshops. So there's a lot on the website there. So if you go to the website, you will be able to see recorded webinars, blogs, also links to register for workshops. quick one about upcoming events, and we've got a big one coming actually. Managing capabilities is something that we've been planning to run for a long time, and this we are thinking we might actually run back-to-back 1-hour sessions on capabilities. So we might, certainly. We might have a 1-hour session like this one, but we're thinking for capability because it's such an important topic for Learning Cafe that we might actually run 2 sessions, but back-to-back. So one might be on the discussion about the framework and how capability management is being practiced in the corporate and the government sector, and the other one would be about case studies about how capability frameworks is being practically being handled there. That's what's coming up. But we also have our Melbourne Unconference, which I do want to talk about. And we've already started taking registrations, and you can see the link there or go to learningcafe.com.au website. What we've got is a great list of speakers already signed up, and there's going to be more coming. Fantastic topic. So essentially, it'll be the same theme as we did in Melbourne, where the unconference was sold out, which is digital disruption, opportunity, and threat for L&D. And if you have a look at the website, the content and the structure, it is quite different from any other event that's held in Australia for L&D professionals. I hope you can attend that at the Melbourne Convention Centre. Okay, so also a little bit about ideasatwork.com.au. It is essentially the website where we talk about the different projects that we are doing. These are new ideas and concepts that we talk about, like VR, for example. And then as we get a group of L&D professionals and investigate each of these concepts, so we might run an Ideas at Work project for virtual reality, and we go through the different stages. We kind of explore, decide whether it's worth experimenting with, and if the experiment works, then we go into implementation. So the one that are most advanced are MOOCs and Tin Can. So there's more information there. Just a quick slide on the digital manifesto for L&D. So this is essentially captures the essence of the philosophy that we think that L&D needs to adopt for the future. It's there on the website, but essentially there are 4 parts to it. Thinking of learners as consumers, curation before you actually create learning, L&D being a persistent facilitator and support, even though it may be online, but still kind of providing that support for learners, and essentially a digital first design and a high value touch, i.e. classroom training is really reserved for the learning that is either very complex or it needs to change minds, right? And you've got the enablers there. So a little bit about that. What we also have is the results from your surveys, right? So I'm gonna share this, and if you've got any comments, please do share your opinions. The first question really was, how far is L&D, away? And 9% said yes, we're currently implementing VR. There are quite a few consultants in the audience. I suspect some of them will be experimenting with VR or indeed producing solutions in VR. So would like to hear from them through the chat box. 22% said yes, ready to go, but not sure how. Right? So very much on the cusp of trying to do something, but don't know the next steps. And hopefully this webinar, along with the workshop that Learning Cafe and Kane and Start VR are planning to run on 21st July. If you want to register for that, it should give you a good roadmap, but also some hands-on experience with virtual reality. 35% think no, it's at least 1 year away. So again, if that's what you think, that's fine. But do watch what's happening in the consumer world, because that might either accelerate much quicker than we expect, or it might not be that quick, and it might take some more time. There are 1/3 or 34% that think that it's at least 3 or more years away, and that is a possibility. And I'll show you another graph a little bit later, which is from Gartner and talks about what stages we are in terms of maturity. But there is 1/3 that think that it's 3 years or more away. You might change your mind after this webinar or not, but that is what you said. The next question really, and this is a question that we're asking more and more, and we do the same for content curation. So what we're asking here is that VR is pretty sophisticated to design and develop. And the question was, how much will L&D be, involved, and to what extent do we have the skills? So 10% of you actually said that, 10% of you actually said that L&D will be bypassed, which means that this solution, I think what that signifies really is this solution is talking about, is so sophisticated that L&D may not have the skills, and it might be other parts of the business that that will develop the solutions. L&D may not be involved, which is a distinct possibility, because as we delve more into what's involved, you might realize that there is a different skill set and capability involved. 62% think no, but we'll be able to do in the future, and certainly if you belong to that group, the workshop, and also attending the unconference will certainly help you, get there. Then 24% said they will be there shortly. If you want to get there quickly, we do have some next steps from this webinar, which you can take up or do your own research. So I think in terms of VR, it really needs you to get familiar with what it is and what is the software that's involved, what are the skills that are involved. And 4% said yes, currently involved in VR learning solutions. So, absolutely, this is good good news. If you can share your views with us, that'll be good. We also asked a question, let's talk about how many of you have actually experienced VR. So if you had come to the unconference, Kane actually bought some headsets. I don't have the high-end headset, the Oculus Rift, but I certainly do have Google Cardboard and have been able to download the apps. The Google Cardboard itself, which uses an which uses a phone iOS or Apple, and then you download the apps. This is for about $25 to $30. The cardboard, Google Cardboard, and you put your phone into it, and then play the app and gives you an experience, and the experience has been quite fantastic. Then, in terms of the results, about half of you really have not experienced VR, and certainly would recommend that you get a taste of that. 27%, and I will include that. I'll include myself in that because I was at Samsung a couple of months ago, and they, had a chance to play around with that set. But really keen to get my hands on Oculus Rift and see what it does. As you're aware, that a lot of companies, including Samsung, Facebook, Google, think that virtual reality, is the next big thing. But certainly, you've got the cardboards, etc. Okay, so look. One graph, this is from 2015 from Gartner, and Gartner does a good job of charting the maturity of emerging technologies, and what's indicated in the red arrows is virtual reality and augmented reality, and we'll be kind of mixing up a little bit of both. They are quite different, and mostly we'll be focusing on virtual reality, but this graph shows that virtual reality especially is now kind of hitting maturity. We've kind of gone through that curve in which people were really excited about virtual reality, and once they got into it, they kind of discovered it wasn't what it was made out to be, or the audience wasn't ready to accept that, and there's been some, I guess every technology does that. It goes through some disappointment, and then once people really do understand what the emerging technology really is for, then that's when the adoption increases, and this is kind of real and practical adoption. So virtual reality, according to Gartner, is in the slope of enlightenment, and then very likely, very shortly, will be in the plateau of productivity, which is it starts getting used. So we are there according to Gartner, and virtual reality is a blue dot. So what it says is that it's 5 to 10 years, but I think the consumer adoption is going to accelerate that, and I might get our panelists to comment on that. So I'm going to actually get our panelists in at the moment. So we've got Kane and Sid. So Kane and Sid, welcome. Sid, I think you're on mute. But Kane, if you just want to comment on this graph about Gartner's maturity curve.
Yeah, I think it is quite indicative of where things are at right now, and I guess virtual reality has been talked about for quite some time, but it's only really been this year that products are starting to roll out and be made available to consumers. So, virtual reality is roughly 25 years old, but the industry wasn't ready for then. But now, because of the internet, mobile phone technology, processing power, and media capture devices, we're actually finally at that critical point where we can actually turn virtual reality into a consumer, create a consumer market. And we're going to see, what we've even seen over the past 2 or 3 years has been, incredible rate of adaptation of technology, increase in performance. The headsets are getting smaller, the experience is getting better all the time. And even though we're very much at the start of an entirely new industry, we only have to look at, I guess, the very first smartphones and what they were like and to what they're like now. We're going to see a similar kind of technological growth and adoption curve to smartphones.
Thanks, Kane. And Sid, welcome aboard. And can I have your views on the graph?
Hi, Jeevan. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Perfect, great. I agree with Kane. I think that we're at a point where we will see an emerging industry. Virtual reality. It's happened before. We've had a couple of redos. We started in the early 90s, even earlier, in military installations before that. Then we had the Sega VR coming through. And of course, then you had screen-based virtual reality with Second Life and the whole wave of virtual worlds, which is how we got started in the 2000s. And then now again, you have the Oculus and the Vive and a whole new industry coming through because of hardware changes and processing power and all of that. I also think that it's good to be skeptical. While I know that we're supposed to be proponents of VR, I think that it's very early. There are many technologies in play. There's a lot more investment, a lot of major players looking at the market right now. So that's good. Every major player is invested in VR, unlike in the past where it was mostly entertainment or, sort of maybe a console company, gaming company, some startup focused on VR like Second Life at Linden Labs. But now you have, hardware and all of that coming together. So we might be at the beginning of a mobile-like revolution, like Ken mentioned, in terms of sort of ecosystem apps and so on. And we hope it does. But I don't know if the word is out on that yet. That's pretty much, the opening remarks.
Thanks, Sid. I know that, I guess we've been talking about, second virtual worlds, etc., for quite some time, and it really hasn't, transpired the way that we hope. But I think you're right. This time might be a little bit different. Talking to Sid, I know that Sid, like I indicated, has got a lot of experience in applying this emerging technologies in healthcare. So the next slide really depicts the ones that, I think education and healthcare have been picked up to be the industries where it probably has the best use cases and more acceptance, likely acceptance. But I also know that banks are talking about using, emerging technologies. So in terms of, just that, be, kind of interesting to watch that space. In terms of the use cases for ourselves or this audience, it's really around employee learning and training, and I guess also for employee collaboration. So in terms of employee learning and training, for example, surgical training is something that Sid's worked on the past, and he can comment when he gets his chance. But also things like sales role play. So you can walk into a sales situation, not a real one, but a virtual one, and you can look around with your goggles and interact with the customer and practice your skills in terms of selling, etc. So these are some of the industries and also some of the use cases, but please do share your thoughts and opinion in the QA panel. We don't have anything as yet in the QA panel, so looking forward to that. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kane to take us through his presentation. So Kane, over to you.
Yes, I'm here, I think.
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much. So thanks, Jeevan. I think there's a chance to be skeptical and optimistic about virtual reality. I guess it's an open playing field, and all these type of use cases we're presenting or thinking about right now, I think are only kind of just scratching the surface. of what's possible. If we think about what the internet was going to be good for, we thought it was going to be good for sharing documents, to each other in the early stages, but entirely new industries, entirely new processes have been spawned out of these new technologies. So virtual reality, I think, is very much in its early days, and I think the common fault is that we look at what we do things now and how we apply that to virtual reality, whereas virtual reality is a complete reset of the technology landscape. So we can reinvent, we can rethink actually how we do training and everything else in our lives as well, communication, entertainment. It's really open for grabs and interpretation. And to come up with these ideas now is a very difficult thing, but we're going to explore this, I guess, over the next 3 to 5 years and beyond. So what virtual reality offers, I guess, compared to other sort of forms of technology, is that it allows you to be anywhere you want. We would recreate any situation imaginable or yet to be imagined. What happens is that when our brains are fed visual information and other sort of input information, we kind of trip into the fight or flight mode. Our lizard brains tend to react to, and it's like if our brain is sensing new experiences, brand new information, it tends to store that information more rapidly than as if we were just looking at a PowerPoint presentation or other sort of learning-based material. So because this information is so new, the brain is storing it for longer. Recall is much faster, and we're starting to see reports emerge, which I had some citations at hand to say that recall in virtual reality is 80% versus 20% versus other sort of methods. Now, there's a lot more science that has to go into that, but we certainly have experienced ourselves that when we show people virtual reality properties or virtual reality experiences, the ability of the user to recall exactly what they've just seen is far more impressive than if we've shown them textures, pictures, or other sort of multimedia. So because the brain is fooled into believing that what we're seeing is real, we can actually do a lot more. We can create sort of more incredible experiences. If you could go to the next slide, Julian. Very strange. Not being able to choose the slide. So I guess the other thing is, until you've experienced virtual reality, you can't actually fully understand what it's like. You can hypothesize what you think virtual reality is like, but you actually do have to experience it. And I think some of the feedback we get from people is that, oh, isn't it just like 3D TV? No, it's actually nothing like 3D TV at all. So what this graphic represents is that our TV screens, our computer monitors, our tablets are effectively windows into other environments. So I can see through a portal of a screen to another place, which is one thing, and then 3D sort of cinematic media portrays that same information with more depth. So I can see that there's one tree in front of the other. I might be able to sort of understand spatially more about what's going on inside the scene. But within virtual reality, you are inside that location, and it's a very different paradigm shift. It places you in the scene where suddenly the user has a higher level of presence and immersion in what's actually transpiring. They're not so much a voyeur, they're a participant in what's actually occurring. And that's the real power of virtual reality. Bing. So one of the other important things to consider with virtual reality is that because when you've got the goggles on your face, and you mentioned this in the intro section, we talked about virtual worlds. Virtual reality means that your vision is completely consumed by this other experience, which is very different to augmented reality, where you see the real world and digital information is projected over the top. Virtual reality means your entire field of vision is filled by something else. And because it's filled by something else entirely, there are no other distractions. You're not worried about what's happening on your phone or the light flickering in the other corner of the room. And because we have that 100% concentration, it means we can actually deliver some amazing sort of training experiences. The chance for learning is greatly amplified when you've got someone's attention fully engaged. The other difference is that when you're in the scene, you're an active participant in it. There's a stronger connection to what's actually happening. You are responsible for what's happening in the scene and the environment around you. Because of that, your active participation means your engagement and retention is going to be much higher, and your ability to understand concepts is far greater by virtue of you participating. And because you're in control of your destiny, that's something that no other training experience can really provide, unless you're talking about a simplified multi-part narrative. Can we go to the next slide? So I just want to talk briefly about headsets and handsets, and there is a typo on that last slide. The HTC Vive does not have a 5 million install base. My apologies. So what we talk about here is this is the spectrum of virtual reality headsets as exists today, and mostly exists in the Western world. The Chinese market is a whole other world of headset devices that are out there right now. But at the very end, we have at the very start we have Google Cardboard, which is a piece of plastic lenses and cardboard, which is easily manufactured and distributed. It's a very cost-effective entry point into VR, but some would argue that it's not really VR because the experience isn't as immersive as the platforms above it. But it is a great way to get people a taste or a sample of what VR can be like. And it works with most modern smartphones. Up from there, we go to the Samsung Gear VR, and that's a premium mobile headset. And I think this is probably one of the areas that, for me, this technology is available right here, right now. You can go out and buy this device now from a Harvey Norman, a JP Hi-Fi, or go to your telco, or order it directly from Samsung. And for the cost of a smartphone, which is what, say $900, and a headset, which is around about $150. So for $1,000, you've got a portable virtual reality system where you can deliver amazing content experiences in a very portable manner. So we're seeing massive adoption of this particular headset in the marketplace, and we certainly use it a lot. And if you're thinking about virtual reality and how you might be able to deploy it, $1,000 for a device is a very cost-effective way of getting that to market. Now from there we go up to, I guess, so if we could just go back one slide, Jeevan, is we've got the PlayStation VR, which is games console based, and it's believed that when they launch in October, Sony expect to sell 2 million devices within the first year. I actually just shared a tweet this morning that the Samsung Gear has just announced that there are over 1 million users already in the marketplace. In Australia, they were literally only launched in April, and I think the average consumption time for the active users is about 25 minutes at the moment, and there's 5 million Google Cardboards. And then at the top of the town, we have Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, and they offer the most immersive VR experiences because they also offer sort of controller input or hand input that you can actually engage with the environment around you. So the HTC Vive is what's called room scale VR. It enables you to walk around a space physically and interact with things. So I can, my left hand becomes the bow, my right hand becomes the arrow. I can literally draw it back and shoot things. Or I could be a surgeon. My left hand could be, holding the scalpel, and my right hand could be, using other sort of, medical implements. So on this particular slide, what this shows is the popular platforms, and it shows, their portability versus their processing power. And you can see that the Samsung Gear VR will probably move up into that sort of higher performance bracket. But it's really there are lots of options available for creating VR right now, from an experience you can hand out to customers using their existing handset to dedicated installation-based experiences like the HTC Vive. So this is a project we've done late last year, which is for a real estate project, Edge 28. So people were able to go to a display center, a display suite in St. Leonard's, where they could see the floor plans, they could see the other sort of environmental effects and fittings for the unit, and and that's what most people would expect when they're looking to buy a property off the plan. You look at the brochure, you see some photos, you see some pictures, you kind of go, oh yeah, I can kind of get it. You look at the floor plan, but it's very hard to visualize what it's actually going to be like inside that apartment. And I think some of the stats we've received is that 21% of sales are lost because people can't actually imagine what it's going to be like in that apartment. So they're invited up to an area where we have 2 or 3 Samsung Gear VRs, and as you can see in the photo here, the potential buyers get to put the headset on, and they're able to look around an environment, and it is as real as being there. The difference is they're able to look around, they can see, they can imagine themselves, that's me in the kitchen, I can imagine little Timmy sitting on the couch doing his homework while Jenny's, working on some cutlery, and that's my view, and oh my goodness, we're going to be fantastic living here. And that level of immersion, placing the user in the actual environment, greatly increases the chance that someone is going to want to buy or engage even further with whatever the proposition is. I want to talk briefly about the New York Times VR. They published 1.3, or distributed 1.3 million Google Cardboards to the network via their papers, and out of that, half of their content they produce is their own editorial content, mostly 360 video production, and half their content is sponsored content as well. So again, they've turned this into a financial model that will be profitable by the end of 2016.
And certainly, yeah, Kane. I mean, I looked at some of the VR stuff there, and it's quite. I think it's probably a premium example of what can be achieved. So you've got a U2 song that you can view. So I think that's. Would you say that's kind of almost like the best examples that you can achieve through VR at this point in time?
No, not at all. Not the best examples. I think they're indicative of what's popular right now as we start to explore the space. So we'll talk about that a little later on, Jim, in the slides. We talk about pre-rendered and in-engine type experiences as well. But I guess what's interesting about the New York Times VR is that it's a very good indication of a company that was able to get into market early, have established themselves at the front, and have built a profitable business. So if people are concerned about, is there a market ready yet? However, is VR ready? If the New York Times is already building a profitable business, I think it's pretty indicative that we are close, and if not there. Obviously, training is a lot of VR training going in very much in simulation-based training, so risk assessment, the ability to take someone to dangerous situations and get them to interact with physical devices and overcome obstacles in real time without actually having to take them into a physically dangerous environment, budgets, and also the effectiveness of training as well. There's a lot of case studies of this happening in mining as well as other industries around the world as well. So I want to talk briefly about the different ways we kind of create content, and that's where it's at right now. Most VR experiences are the domain of a dedicated VR production company like ourselves, and we talk a little bit about that process later on. But it's important to distinguish that there's effectively two different types of content for creating VR. First is pre-rendered, and the second is in-engine. And then what you have is an interactive layer that can be applied over both of those. So we'll just go to the next slide. Pre-rendered is probably the easiest form to capture. So we're talking about 360-degree videos, 360-degree stills. They could be generated through a photographic camera, or they could be generated out of a computer program as a finished rendered scene. And what it means is you've got a fixed point of view. The scene can transform around you, and it's more narrative-based. So there's a start, a middle, and an end. Think of a regular video that we might look at right now. The animation happens around you, and you have the ability to interact over the top with different items. Now, pre-rendered is probably going to be the easiest method for capturing and creating VR content moving forward. 360-degree cameras are about to explode onto the scene. Samsung has a range of devices. Ricoh have devices. Canon will be releasing devices. Every manufacturer and his dog will be releasing 360-degree capture devices soon. And that means it's like putting a video camera in the hand of your training department. You'll be able to capture your own workplace experiences and workplace environments and create interactive VR experiences. The other thing about pre-rendered is that it's more affordable, I think, to capture, and the other thing is you can actually create real-world examples, so you can have real human beings in that environment. So you can have your HR staff members, actual real people, has a real impact on how you may engage and participate in the content, versus in-engine, which is what we're on now. And the difference here is this is more like a game engine, more like virtual world. So you've got a 3D model or a 3D space, and you physically move through that model as part of the VR experience. It's harder to do, I guess, on the mobile type of devices, because whilst your body is still, your brain is moving, that can create some conflict and in the body's sensory input, and therefore you can feel nauseous and almost like a reverse car sickness. So you have to be careful about how you move people around. If anyone's tried VR and had a nauseating experience, chances are it was because you were being forced to move in the virtual world, but your physical body was staying very, very fixed. Now that's different when we're using something like the Oculus Rift, or the PlayStation VR, or the HTC Vive, because your body can physically move as well, and you're receiving all the other inputs to match what's happening inside your brain. But in engine, you've got real-time engagement, so we can do more dynamic things in real time. So, a user can cause an action to happen, and the animation will play out accordingly. So there's an unlimited potential to create any type of environment we want within an engine. You can freely move around, and you can participate in the environment. The other disadvantage with that is that it's very difficult to create realistic or photorealistic environments, which is why, as you can see in this type of screenshot, we've got a highly stylized version of what's going on. So it all depends on what your training needs are. Sometimes a stylized version, visual input, can provide just as much useful input to the user, but sometimes photorealism is going to be important. So that idea, sometimes if you put like a 3D person into a scene, it loses its believability if you're having to interact with that person. Over the horizon, there's a lot of new technologies coming out that will help enhance that experience. There's 8i, which is a human capture that will capture someone in 360 and make them available as a 3D model, which means you'll be able to look around them and participate and interact with them. Light fields is another method for capturing, which gives us far more data and information about a space, more important than video, and somewhat cross that bridge between pre-rendered and in-engine. Gesture inputs, so this is the ability for scanners to understand what your hands are doing and how your fingers are interacting with the scene for more natural input. And then there's mixed reality, which is a combination of virtual reality and augmented reality. And in the next 5 to 10 years, I think we can start to see these devices merge into a single device, or some of the technology leaching into each other, and that'll be called mixed reality in the future. So just talking very much about the VR production process, it's not too dissimilar to the way you might do any type of project, whether that's using a waterfall or a Scrum-based method. There's some form of proposal, working out what the outcomes need to be, what are the timelines, what are the budgets, who are the stakeholders, and then from there, you build a functional specification or a document that outlines what you're going to build. And then we move into pre-production, working out interface design, instructional design, scripting, whatever we need to do to actually start the production process. And the production process is similarly: are we shooting with 360 video? Are we creating 3D scenes? Are we, doing a combination of all those different environments? So production could be part game design, could be part video production. And then in the end, similarly, we've got testing and distribution, like you would any other sort of project. So the VR production process is not too different to the way we currently do things. It's just using a range of different media and construction techniques to achieve a result inside virtual reality.
So Ken, quick question. Compared to, let us say, a video production process, where is it different to the VR? I mean, is there more of pre-production, time spent on pre-production compared to, let's say, producing a video?
There's certainly some technical considerations during the shoot. With a regular video, you can have lighting directors and technicians and a whole bunch of people behind the camera and out of shot. With a 360 video shoot, it's where do you hide the staff? Where do you hide the director? Where do you hide the different technicians involved in the shoot? So there's some logistical issues around that. And as a result, what we find is that you have much smaller crews that are going out and shooting 360 video projects. But then to offset that, there's usually a longer post-production process. So a 360 video usually is captured using 6 or more video cameras, all pointing in different directions. And the post-production process requires that we have to stitch all of those different video elements together, and that takes a long time. So we have a rough idea that for every 1 day shoot, there's 4 days of post-production that goes in line with that, just to stitch and edit and pull these different pieces together. There are some differences in the editing process. Drafts could have bad stitching, and it is a slower post-production process.
Okay, thanks for that. And look, there are lots of questions which I've kind of attempted with my limited knowledge to answer. If you can jump onto those, that'll be fantastic. I'm going to hand it over to Sid or Siddharth. Sid, over to you.
Perfect. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeevan. Thanks, Kane. That was really useful. I'm going to take a slightly different tack. I think Kane did an excellent job explaining the different processes involved in creating a VR experience and the technical considerations. I'm going to talk a little bit about VR training and what I feel and our company feels is sort of the inevitability of this it's not a question of if, but when, and even the when is sort of now. So this is what the first slide is talking about, that the future is now. I briefly mentioned in my opening comments that we had sort of commercial VR in the sense that something was available for consumers to use back in 1991. So this is not new technology. Sega did a pretty good job. So, we do have better processing power. We do have mobile handsets, but the basic VR experience has existed for a while now. So what's different this time around? That's the big question. Sorry, Shivan, I think no worries. So this time around, I think the fact that we've got this whole bunch of devices coming up. So you've got, Shivan, sorry, the slide before this. We've got the Oculus, the cardboard, and the Vive and the Gear that Kane mentioned. And I think, in the next 2 to 3 years, we will see the emergence of far more devices. And there's again, as Kane mentioned, there's a whole lot of devices in the Chinese market that is making this more affordable and a technology which is here and now. So moving on to the next slide, we're talking about, so fine, on the hardware end, things are coming to a head. We can all agree to that. But what is the other big shift in trend that's happening? Why do you, as an L&D professional, need to start thinking about VR? Well, this is very well known. Sort of 1 in 3 American worker, and we largely work in the U.S. markets and in India. So 1 out of 3, person in the U.S. workforce is a millennial. You have, by 2030, 75% of the global workforce being millennial. So these statistics are well known. So the question is, however, that if you've ever seen a millennial, and I am one, you know that they are hooked to their phones and their devices. So the general standard of media that they're consuming is very high. So training of any kind is boring to begin with. Let's start by admitting the obvious, and we all know this. But when delivered in a format that's uninspiring, to say the least, it's even more boring. So how do we as L&D professionals, how do we as a community keep up with what's happening as the basic expected standard of media going in? So if you move on to the next slide, what we see is, Jeevan, if you can have, thanks. So these are the 3 big trends that I keep mentioning. So there is a disruption in demographics. So you've got the entire sort of Gen Y coming in, and then Gen Z following up after this. They expect different kind of media. They just think that the basic benchmark for what kind of media they want to consume is much higher than the PPTs and the video in training, which was the last big revolution that happened 10 years ago, right? So what's new? What's happening now? And so a part of that larger demographic trend is where VR fits in. So you've got disruption in hardware, disruption in demographics, and hardware is both mobile as well as the head-mounted headsets, and the new VR devices, augmented devices, and moving ahead there'll be maybe direct implants, retinal implants, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And then there's disruption in games or media habits rather. So people love doing different things on the devices that they have. They want to interact with the media and not merely consume it. So these 3 trends are coming together, and right at the intersection is where the training industry is sitting. And what we tell our clients is that you can just, if you're going to do a refresh of your content for these devices, and honestly most training content is lagging about 5 to 10 years behind the time. So you still have the PPTs and the videos. They haven't really moved on to newer devices. Even most companies that we interact with are just starting to implement mobile-based interactive training, or sort of game-based training, or gamification training, which is still screen-based in that sense. They haven't started thinking about VR. So the practical approach that we take as a company when we are talking to the L&D community is, listen, you guys are going for a content refresh to begin with, so why not also have VR as a capability baked in from the beginning? That way you don't have to reinvest in 3 to 4 years. Your content doesn't become redundant. And the reasons for doing that is, is sort of the numbers that we're talking about. So 171 million active VR users. Of course, this is largely still entertainment, but what it talks about is capability. So there's going to be this level of awareness, device usage in the market. It's a big number. 30 billion in terms of just, again, sort of talking about the size of the market. VR, AR combined. Augmented reality devices are slightly different from virtual reality devices, but again, with Magic Leap and mixed reality devices coming in, we're going to start seeing convergence, I believe. So, you know, and then 500 million VR headsets by 2025. Again, just sort of basically talking about the fact that the trend seems to be strong and here to stay. And that, you know, L&D as a profession needs to take cognizance of this and start preparing for this. So what are the major opportunities? Of course, health, and I'm going to talk about that. Besides Indusgeeks, I am a co-founder in another company, which is Stanford, California-based. It's a company called SimTabs, and with my co-founder, who was a you know, research scientist out of Stanford for about 11 years. We are focusing, you know, exclusively on healthcare as a market. Healthcare games, serious game simulations, VR, AR, bringing new interactive technologies to healthcare training to disrupt that. That's what we do. And the kind of traction we are seeing, I do want to talk about that later. So entertainment, automotive, advertising, education, and so on. So everybody's sort of spoken about this. And so you have skilled trades, and I think that's really a big market. Skilling through VR, I think, is going to be the next big sort of horizon opportunity. Moving on to more specific, you know, use cases. Jeevan, on to the next. Thank you. So we have telepresence. I do want to talk about this. Very important application. As opposed to sort of, you know, this is a convergence of your GoToMeeting like software that we have right now, and presence technology that Cisco is selling, telepresence. With VR, you have a cheaper means of achieving the same kind of presence, which is available in the palm of your hand, literally. And once that starts happening, once we can teleport you to a different environment altogether on demand, with the availability of these cheap VR sets, the very basic nature of interaction is going to change. So I'll give you a quick anecdotal example. Companies like Magic Leap, Microsoft HoloLens, which is more AR than VR, they're actually, you know, for a few employees, they've banned desktops in the offices. So people are using screens within their VR, AR headsets as the virtual screen going in without the need for a desktop and simply an input device like a keyboard. Now that's changing the complete nature of the workplace, even physically as we know it, and which is why telepresence is a very important enterprise and training opportunity going in. Immersive training, I mean, this is just illustrating some of the examples that I spoke about. Immersive training in healthcare, this is really important. Let me take a brief moment to talk about this. We've been selling virtual reality, screen-based simulations, gaming, and for the last 9 years, right? And until about, I think, 2013, 2014, the sentiment in the market was, this is interesting, this is good, but this is very niche. You know, it's something that I can do as a prototype, but I don't see how I can adopt this for mass use. But starting 2014, into 2015 and now into 2016, we see the trend changing completely. We have people walking up to us asking us how and no longer why. You know, how do we do this? We know we want to do this. We have a millennial audience. We know that we need to engage them. This seems to be the new technology. How do we do it? And bear in mind, this is this, you know, these are the same buyers. These are people, you know, in senior management roles in their 40s and 50s, the same people who were not very sure about technology or this kind of technology a couple of years ago, pretty much at this point being desperate, you know, with the new sort of horde of millennials, they keep calling them, knocking down their door saying, you know, how do we engage them? These people just do not seem to be engaged. So what kind of technologies come in? So one specific example, for instance, is with SimTabs, we are working with the American Society of Anesthesiologists. Now, this is the largest society of physician anesthesiologists you know, in the U.S. And essentially, what they're saying is that, you know, we are going to use your simulations and going in mobile and VR. Right now, it's screen-based for actually providing continual continuing medical education, CME credits, to anesthesiologists and physicians in the U.S. Using simulations as the very basis for training and assessment. So it's no longer in the realm of, can use, niche use, or prototyping. It's very much mainstream now, and even very deep professions are starting to see the uses and applying it. Moving on to the next slide, opportunities in the military. In fact, that's an example of something we've created for FEMA in the U.S. In terms of VR. It's a simple cardboard VR port. Again, I'll talk about that a little later. And moving on to the next slide, this is an important case study. I did want to talk about it. This is, I wanted to illustrate something that can be done here and now. So one of the things we're doing is what we call content disruption. So what's happening with VR is, of course, there is delivery disruption, right? You've got new devices that are allowing you to deliver these experiences, and Kane's spoken about all kinds of new devices. He's spoken about the different kind of content that can be created. But let me give you a specific example. For instance, we were thinking, how do we create an experience that everyone likes and that's sort of topical? And we came up with this one, which is essentially about negotiating with aliens, right? So it's skill building, it's negotiation. Everyone needs it. But what about creating the kind of content experience that you'd probably only see in the movies, or Peter Jackson film, or one of those? And an example that I like to cite pretty often is, we get a lot of flack from L&D professionals saying, well, but the substance is there. How does it matter what the form is like? And I always keep saying that, imagine reading the Lord of the Rings books, and a lot of us did, and we're huge fans, and the books are better in some ways than the movies. But for a vast majority of people, the movie would be, the book would not be real unless they saw the movie. That's the power of content transformation. So you already have great content with your L&D trainings, but you do not have the right format. So you need to transform your content from what you have to where you need to be, using tools like VR for content transformation to make it more appealing. Sort of going back to, so what you just saw, essentially what we did was we created a cardboard Oculus and Gear VR versions of this scenario, which is, and we're still building it. It's a product that we're going to launch in the next 3 to 4 months. These are early images from the product, which essentially talk about what kind of content can you create with this kind of device, right? So you've got an alien character, and the ability to be immersed in that environment. Again, as Kane spoke about, the fact that your mind is open, more engaged, it's a novel experience. But even more than that, once the novelty wears off, once this becomes, something that you do every day, what then? It still is more engaging and immersive than anything else that you have, simply because it wraps around you. So these are the kind of opportunities that you have, but what are the kind of challenges that you're looking at? So I would say one of the bigger challenges is cost of entry. And, I still don't believe that we have the killer app for VR as a product. Again, going back to the mobile ecosystem, if you did not have that killer app, whether it was a texting app, whether it was Instagram, you had to have these killer apps that really made the mobile ecosystem what it is today. I don't think we have that, but we'll start seeing that emerging. The beginnings of that is a marketplace, again, an app store, which doesn't exist right now. So one of these companies will start consolidating the market, and that will start happening.
So Sid, can I just just to interrupt, because we've got a question from kind of Karen, and I guess we all know that what we've seen in the slides from yourself and Kane, obviously extremely exciting and extremely value-adding. But I think for a lot of people in the audience, and also including myself, you talked about the cost of entry, right? So there is, I guess, a certain fixed cost, or you need to have a certain minimum amount of money, before you can produce. So you kind of you probably $1,000 startup won't do. And what you have implied is that in the absence of a killer app, either in especially in the development space where it becomes easier and cheaper, and so it's still going to be a little bit you kind of need to have a little budget to do that. Do you have any prediction about the killer app, when it might come through and how much the cost would be reduced? So I'm putting you on the spot, but kind of just give us some idea about the costs involved, and I'll also reflect the question to Kane afterwards.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll actually, I was going to talk about the cost of entry in the roadmap, which is the next slide, as to what we think. So I don't actually believe that even today the cost of entry for VR is very high. I think Kane's example of $1,000 headset is great for a fully immersive experience with something like Gear VR. But what we're doing as starter sets is asking our clients to invest in basic $25 sets, cost-effective mobile VR, as you can see the exciting road ahead. So that's just a $20 investment and your smartphone, right? So I don't think that the cost of entry is prohibitive even today. So the roadmap, the question being, is it fairly reasonable for a business to invest in? I would say absolutely. The kind of content that you create, especially in a game engine, which is synthetic VR, is always portable between different devices, whether it's cardboard or it's an HTC Vive or Oculus. The user experience might differ a little bit, so you have a little bit of porting cost. But overall, the cost of entry is not prohibitive at all, even today. $25 and a mobile phone, which everyone has, pretty much all mobile phones will support basic VR experiences, is good to get people to the 70% experience of a $1,000 headset. So I would say that we can do it today. In terms of a killer app, in terms of usage, I honestly think that once telepresence and gesture control starts sort of coming through, you will start seeing different UI and sort of different user interactions, user UX, and so learning and training is going to be a big market as a killer app. But I think interactive social spaces, again, revisiting the virtual world paradigm that Second Life started, and incidentally, the founder has started another company called High Fidelity, which is focusing on the next generation of VR headset. So I think the killer application is going to be social interaction.
Sid, can I just interrupt, because you kind of said the cost of entry in terms of getting a headset, and that's really come down, and that's what's driving that. But the cost of entry in terms of a company to develop something in VR, so that's still high, because there isn't like a software or software-hardware combination that allows you to produce VR pretty quickly in a quick and efficient manner. So companies still need
again,
budget.
Jeevan, no, not true. I think what's happened is with game engines like Unity and Unreal, making VR porting available as as a default option within them. Companies like us who create content for this market, we've been able to bring the price point down to maybe about 20-30% of where a high-end, very rich interactive e-learning content was. I mean, in fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and let people know what kind of. So between, I would say, about $2,000 to $3,000 US per minute of interactive content is what the price has come down to. And of course, with volumes, you can even get it down to about $1,500 US dollars per interactive minute of content. That's the kind of pricing we're seeing right now, and that's possible to get in the market. That's not very expensive from a very high-end, say, Captivate course. So it's still expensive, but not prohibitive.
So can I just check with Kane? Kane, your views on the cost of entry, especially in terms of developing VR training solution?
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen costs as low as $1,500 per minute. Certainly here in Australia, I know we certainly could produce content of high quality to that sort of budget. I mean, I would go against the grain as to say yes, at the moment VR production is probably more expensive than the traditional methods. I mean, we have to think about this in
Yeah, but I think we're losing Kane just because of the connectivity. So I think we're kind of beyond our time. But I think to summarize, there is a little bit. It's not like producing an online click next course, and they're obviously very, very different products. So certainly I think it's a space I think again, Sid and Kane, is probably going to be pushed by consumer trends, a consumer adopting it and then going there. But we're talking about the different banks, especially in Australia, are already looking in VR into VR. We're talking about newspapers actually allowing you. New York Times has done this, I think, as an example, is allowing you to experience a war zone. So you kind of walk into that. But I think, like you said, Sid. I might actually just hand it over to you to quickly, wrap up the slide that you have. That is going to be a challenge, I guess, small challenges.
Absolutely. Again, the cost, like Kane says, varies in terms of what kind of content you need out there. But learning and development, for the standard stuff that we have out there, it is possible to do it right now. Was what I was trying to say. Just to sort of wrap up, we are going to start seeing design experiences that are going to be very different from what we can imagine today. The entire sort of design architecture is new. The device gesture stuff, everything is new. So in terms of how this plays into learning and training, the experience is still not there. The market's really young, so we'll need to learn how to develop better experiences. And of course, I think the biggest inflection point is going to happen when you have one seamless integrated experience with gesture control and all of that built in. So you can have that built in as a sort of standard mobility handset slash headset whenever you're traveling, so you already have the telepresence. That's going to be the killer app going in. The moment that starts happening, I can map myself in a virtual environment, then I can do so much there. And content is going to start falling as it becomes more and more pervasive. So that's pretty much about it. I think you can start right now, is my point. You don't have to wait till the retinal implants come in for that to start happening. And so there is a viable business use case for investing today.
Look, I think we're over time. So look, thank you very much, Kane and Sid. And I think we really kind of haven't come to an answer as to whether it's too early for the L&D folks to start exploring. Certainly, I think the conclusion in my mind is, look, VR is going to come, and it might come sooner than expected. It is not, I guess, an easy solution to get your head around, especially for L&D folks who haven't worked in this space. And it's pretty, it is sophisticated. It's a very sophisticated solution. And I think the message, especially from Learning Cafe, is that even if you think your audience and your company is not ready for it now, you need to get ready by start exploring, doing pilots, and experiencing it hands-on. So get used to VR, and once you've done that, you'll be ready when the business comes knocking on your doors. So look, I want to thank everyone for participating. We've got people 43 people still online, and I think there are lots of answers that were answered, but a lot more that were raised. And I'm sure maybe in the next 6 months or 8 months we'll do another webinar and progress that. So again, Sid from India, thanks. Early for you. Ken, thank you very much for also coming across the unconference and I guess building the capacity and the capability within the L&D profession about the knowledge about VR. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone. Thank you, everyone, and hopefully you'll join the webinar on capability management. I think that'll be that'll be a good one. So if you need to close, please just shut your the browser application for GoToWebinar, and that'll be it. Thanks, everyone. Sid, thank you very much. I know I had to. Oh, Sid's gone.